The Supreme Court, 100 years before, had said, when that necessity arises, the thing to do is amend the Constitution, not read the language to mean something it never was intended to mean. But let me go back to what the words actually say. Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce among the several states, to regulate commerce among the states. Now, in that same case I mentioned, the Gonzales case, the Supreme Court conceded, as it had before, that Congress was not regulating commerce. It conceded that. And yet it went on to hold that Congress had the power to do so. At some point, the Supreme Court, which has no army, it has no marshals, it has no practical means of enforcing its orders. And you've all heard the apocryphal story about President Andrew Jackson saying, Mr. Marshall has made his decree, now let him enforce it. The Supreme Court's credibility and its only power is in the acceptance of the people of its decrees. And when it goes so far beyond what any layman can read, it loses that credibility. And clearly, inch by inch, it has gone beyond what anyone intended in 1788 when it was ratified. And to impose something different now, simply because circumstances have changed, makes the Constitution, as Thomas Jefferson said, in the hands of judges, a mere thing of wax. It can mean anything they want. Now, I'm not so naive as to believe that if one state enacted a law such as this, prohibiting, it obviously is intended to prohibit Congress from enacting a law which would address, which would deal with or regulate activity that's conducted wholly within Virginia, that we might prevail in the Supreme Court. But as Delegate Marshall reminds me, the Supreme Court decisions follow election returns. It also follows the movement across this country that's clearly reflected in the media. They can't help but report on it now, misreport sometimes. But this is where the millions of people in the street, they're not enough soldiers to kill us all. But it depends on our ability to mobilize, galvanize other Americans to follow the same course and to encourage other states to do exactly what Virginia is going to do, particularly in regard to the next speaker's subject, the Obamacare provision. If enough states do the same thing, I dare say no president and no Congress is going to defy that show of force. We have every right to interpret the Constitution ourselves. After all, it is, as the Virginia Supreme Court has said, they are the rules, it embodies the rules that we have agreed to be governed by. And if it can be changed by the reading of 5 men on the Supreme Court, a bare majority, then the Constitution clearly is a mere thing of wax. But to stop this ever expanding this power grab by the Supreme Court and Congress, we've got to mobilize enough people to pass enough statutes of this sort to make it clear that there may be a decree from the Supreme Court, but we have a right to interpret the Constitution too. And when we do it through our elected officials in the various states, when the point comes when enough states have said enough, I think we will have enough. And I think that message will be delivered as clearly or perhaps more clearly than at the 9/12 demonstration. But we've got a very short period of time to do it in. And I invite you all to participate in that, just as Benjamin Rush and John Adams did. We don't have to worry about signing our death warrant. It takes some risk, but more than that, it takes our time and attention. The first thing we've got to do is to go down to the Capitol to make sure our legislators do what's right and start a pattern. We'll be one of the first legislatures to finish the session and get these laws before the governor for signature than other states, because we start early and we finish early. We can set an example for the rest of this country. So I think when you go down to the General Assembly, not only go in numbers, but go with passion. Let them know that we are just as committed as our founders were to having the constitutional balance they envisaged. Thank you very much.